I love how you set up. It's so good. And this, for everyone to see, this is a closer up version of it with all of its layers. And well, actually, I think I added these layers because I noticed when you go to print that everything prints a bit darker, at least with the vendor I was using. So I made some slight adjustments to the color, but I didn't adjust the integrity of your artwork at all. So something I love about your artwork is all the dots that you do.
Thank you.
Did you go in, and I love the little knight down here. I fucking love the dead knight. So like, what is your process for this? Do you go in with like the pen tool like in Photoshop, or what program did you use to do this? Walk me through your process, I guess.
So for that one I used Photoshop. I start with a rough sketch, just kind of outlines in the color and start filling things in, figuring out the anatomy and how everything's going to come together. I did the dragons on separate layers from each other and the background, at least to start. Mm-hmm. And then I zoomed in really, really close and just started putting in those individual dots.
That's awesome.
And that's how I kind of got that all that detail work in there.
Is there anything that you see in this now? Because we were talking earlier about critiquing your own work. Is there anything that you see in this now where you're like, oh my god, or I could do that? I'm not asking you to like degrade your own work, but when I look at stuff, yeah, this interview, haha, got you. Tell me what you hate about your own stuff.
Hey, it's fine.
No, I'm just kidding. Is there anything about this just that you would be like, oh man, I wish I would have done that differently, just from an artist to another artist?
I don't think I understood the focus or the depth of focus that you tend to get with realism, which is what I was trying to go a little bit more for with, all my crystals and things like that. Mm-hmm. Things that are further away should be blurred out a little bit more rather than just to have different areas of focus, like the dragon's in focus, but you've got that knight in the background, for example, that I think is just a little bit too sharp, among other things.
Oh yeah, because I can see now that the tail is blurry because it's further away, and then up on the the loins or whatever is more in focus, and the back and this part of the wing are perfectly in focus.
Yeah, so, and yeah. I didn't quite understand how all of that worked at the time I did that.
So that's something that you've gotten better at as time's gone on? That's awesome, dude. So this one was for, the 2015 calendar as well. I think I had you do 3, because I know you did one for the 2017. This is the one you did for the 2017 calendar. Yes. And let me get this in preview mode here. So this is my favorite one out of all the ones you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah. Like, I love the water and the waterfall and the sun, like these colors, like, because I'm a designer, so I try, like, my job is to take data that my company gives me and make it look good, right? Like, having colors that are complementary, and I'll be super nerdy about it. Like, I'll go online and I'll go to a color wheel, which I rarely do, but because we have a set color palette we work with, which is basically black, white, red, and gray. So that's it's really, there's not much variance. But if I were to create something more colorful, like, you've matched this teal or aqua of the water with the sky, like, it's perfectly not analogous, but opposite, I guess. Like, it just complements itself.
Right.
But this is so good, dude, and I love how, like, the dots are even more, like, they're even better on this one. You can see that you've got like, these bigger scales here, and they get smaller, and the shading and all the light hitting it.
And that's kind of part of what I was talking about, with certain things being in focus more than others too. Also, I mean, like, look at her wing on the far side compared to other things that are closer up. And I think I nailed this one a bit more on the technical aspects.
Oh, for sure. I completely agree with you. Yeah, like, you can see your progress as an artist on this, definitely. And you can tell, like, the coral up front here in the bottom right is, like, way more in focus than the coral in the background. And it gets progressively, more out of focus the further back you go. And you can see, like, the motion around the tail, and it's just, like, it's super good. And my favorite part is the face. Like, I love this face on this blue dragon, dude. And I love the eye. Like, you can just tell it's, like, there.
I tried to take inspiration from sharks and other similar sea creatures to make him more of a sea dragon rather than what you would typically expect in a dragon.
Oh, for sure. You know what? The first time I'm just noticing this now is she's smiling,
Yes.
Dude, that is fantastic.
Thank you.
I've been, because I look at it zoomed out, right? Like I look at it, because this was 8.5 by 11, so I'm looking at it, and I look at it so often, so many times, but I've never closely looked at the face on the female one, and I hope that's not coming across as an insult, because the longer I look at artwork, the more I see.
And I tried to put a lot of different detail into it to bring the characters to life more. I don't expect people to notice everything.
Well, this is going to sound a little fucked up, but what I really wanted these pictures to be is to have so much detail, because I remember when I was a kid, one of the things that I loved about like looking at the books that my mom would read to me or paintings I would see for like children's books is the amount of detail they'd put into it, and that my eyes would just get lost. And so when I was talking about this with artists, I was like, I want this to be something that like a kid's book, you know, like, or something with all this like magical detail.
Right.
But it's a hard analogy to make. I don't want to be like, yeah, make it like a kid's book with dragons having sex. Like, that's not okay.
No. But I understood what you meant, and that's why I went all out with all the coral and everything I've got going on there.
Yeah. Okay, so then the first one you did, I think, is this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so fucking love this. I love, like, the amount of detail you did on the gold. I don't know if you created a special brush to, like, duplicate this, like, texture, or if you did this all by hand, but I pray to God you did a brush or something.
I actually didn't know how to use brushes at that time.
Cool.
I copied and pasted a few sections to even out the background and then painted over it.
Beautiful. Beautiful, dude. Because I was even when I got this, I started to learn how to use brushes at my work. We don't use a lot of Photoshop, mainly for photo correction, but not for like art. Mm-hmm. And as I've moved away from Photoshop, I mean, I use Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign kind of all together for my job, but I rarely will go into Photoshop and create something. But I remember at one point in my like development as a designer was using pattern brushes, and I remember looking at this and be like, oh my god, I hope that Silvia used... Wait, Silvia, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Because I always want to call you all these, like, 5 other names. So I'm like, God, I hope that Silvia used a brush for this. Dude, it's so good. This is... And I use this to base one of my pins off of, which...
Yeah, I saw that.
Looks so good. Like, this is just brilliant. It's one of the epitomas? What's the word? It's just one of the images that people associate with the Dragon Sex calendar. Mm-hmm. And my pins are not selling very well. They haven't been for years, so that might have been a poor venture to go into, but we'll see. They cost a lot to produce, which is surprising. I went through, the first time I designed them, I went through an importer, and he or she charged like 500% per pin. And so this last time I went directly to the vendor. But anyway... and then this one is the holiday one, or the Halloween one. You can even see your work with the scales is even getting better, because this is the last one you did for the 2015 calendar.
Yes.
Because I remember asking, like, hey, do you want to do one more? And you're like, sure. And that was for Halloween, and it just looks even better. You seem to be, like, more comfortable with the whole process.
Yeah. I figured out more about what I was doing with how I was doing the scales and how I was doing light and shadow and all of these things.
Mm-hmm. You can definitely tell. I love the blue corn moon, or whatever they call it, and like you can see the shadows coming through the fence over here.
Yep.
And just the way the moonlight is. I love this like white glow around, like all the way around the dragon from the moon hitting it. It's so good. And something you do, your style is, I love this like this nose thing you do. This, like, part of the skull. That's, like, your trademark.
Really?
Yeah, because I think you've done it, and I love it, dude. I think you've done it on... Let me get to the right view here. Wait, you didn't do it on that one. You did it on this guy here. And on this one here. It's not a thing, I just noticed, like, it's your trademark. Like, you can definitely tell that that's, like... You're really thinking about the skeletal structure.
Yeah.
You're not just drawing, oh, here's a dragon head. Burp. You know, like, that's awesome.